Hi everybody. In this video I'm going to walk through the cakes list exercise you've been working on and show you how I would implement search filtering so that people can type in a search phrase and it will only show cakes matching that phrase. So in the previous video you got your cakes fetching from an API and displaying. So let's just review quickly what I've got here. So in my app, I've set up some state and I've created an array for my cakes, and it's empty when it starts, and then when the component is loaded, it fetches from the API, retrieves that cake data, and sets that cake data to the cakes property in the state. So that's how we get a list of cakes, and then we pass that state, that cakes property in the state, we pass it down as a prop to cakes. And if we look in cakes, we can see that it takes that prop.cakes, maps over it, and prints out a cake for each one. So this is what it looks like now. Loads up blank, and then fetches from the API, and then displays all the cakes in the list. So what we want to do is we want to add a search input field here so that the user can type in a search phrase and it will only show them the cakes matching that search phrase. So before we get too focused on how everything's going to work, I'm just going to set up a input field and make sure that it's on the page and it's loading properly. So let's go ahead and create our search component. I know that this component won't have any state in it, so I'm going to go ahead and make it a functional component. So let's go ahead and see if I've set that up properly just by checking. So we can see we've got the input field here, and if I type, some stuff's going to appear. So that's good. We're on the right track. Now what we want is we need to make sure that every time I type in here, we can respond to that event and make some changes. So before we figure out the whole architecture, let's just make sure we've got that first step right, that when we type in the field, we can execute some code and respond to that event. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the onChange attribute, which is an attribute you can attach to any input field or a select field. And it looks like this. And what you pass to it is a function. We're going to call our function name search input changed. So what we've done is we've created an attribute and passed it a JavaScript variable. But right now that variable doesn't equal anything. So I'm just going to create another function up here that's going to, actually I'm going to create it right here. And normally this isn't how you would handle this kind of search input change functionality. I'm just going to do it here to demonstrate how it works, and then I'll move it over to the correct place. But first I just need that function. And the function is going to receive one argument, which is an event that the browser creates. So every time I'm typing in here, the browser is automatically creating an event. So when we use this onChange property, what we're telling it is capture that event that the browser is creating and pass it into this function as an argument. And that event is going to have a lot of details, but the one I want now is a reference first to the event's target, and the target of the event is the HTML element that created the event. So since it's this input field creating the event, that event.target is going to point to this field. And then once I've got that field, I can look inside the field at the value property to get the actual value of what the user has typed in. So before we go any farther, let's just log that out and see what's happening. if I come in here and type, I can see over here on the right, I've got 5 events. Each time I typed, created 1 event, and it printed out the current value. So if I go through and delete, we can see each change is causing a new event to fire and a new log to be printed. But in reality, we need this input function to actually interact with the cakes list, which is stored as state inside of our app. So what we need to do is move this handler function into our app.js and then pass it down as a prop. I'll show you how to do that. I'm just going to copy this out. I'm going to dump it into the app component. And since the app component is a class component, we need to define our functions in a little bit of a different way. So instead of using this function name, our function keyword, and then the name of the function, we're actually just going to remove that and then add an equal sign and then turn this into an arrow function, which will ensure that it fires properly within this app, no matter where it's fired from. Then, so now I've got this method, or a function, which is attached to this class app, and I need to pass it down to the search component as a prop. This way, the search component can actually fire it whenever it needs to, but it will actually just pass down the function itself. So I'm going to say on input change equals, and now I need to pass a reference to that function. So what I've done is I've created a prop called onInputChange, and I've passed it the function. It doesn't fire the function right away, just passes it down. So I can receive that as a prop, and then in my onChange attribute, I just have to know the name of the prop, which is onInputChange, and I can say props.onInputChange. So what that's going to do is it's going to say every time that this input element changes, fire this function that's attached to app.js. So let's just see if it's still working. Will I still get a log when I type in? And I do. It's all looking great so far. So why did I actually move it from search into app? I did that so that we can actually change the state of the app in response to this event. Search.js doesn't actually have access to the state, the list of cakes in the app. Only app can control that list of cakes, so it's inside the app that we have to make the change. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new array for matching cakes. These are cakes which match the search query. And then I'm going to filter my state where I have my list of cakes. So what I've done here is I've created a new array that's only going to contain cakes where the cake title includes the search phrase. So if I typed hello, it would only include cakes that say hello in the title. Now that I've got this array, I actually need to update my state, because unless I update my state, nothing in my app is going to change the way it's actually presented. So now, whenever I go to my input field and I type something, it's going to pass that event to onInputChange, which is going to come back to this event, searchInputChanged, and then it's going to pass, then I'm going to filter and I'm going to update my state so that the list of cakes changes. Let's see if that worked. So if I type sponge, yep, I've only got cakes with sponge in the name. Now, one thing you'll notice, I've done this, but now if I go back and I type lemon, all the cakes are gone. It's not finding any matches, even though if I refresh, I can see there's definitely a lemon cheesecake. I can try it again, sponge. This time I'll search for cheesecake. Nothing. So what's happening here is that I take a list of all the cakes which match the search phrase, which first time through is sponge. So now my cakes list looks like this. All the other cakes are no longer in the list. So the next time that I enter in a search phrase like cheese, it goes through and it looks for any cakes that have cheese in the name, but only if they were already in the state. So all of my lemon cheesecakes have already been kicked out of the state. In order to fix this, we actually need two lists. We need one list, which is all the cakes, no matter what the user is searching for at the time. It has to store every single cake. And then we'll have a second list, which is just the cakes that we're displaying at the moment. In order to do this, I'm going to create a new piece of state called cakes displayed. So this is only going to be cakes that we're displaying right now. When the component loads and it fetches the whole list of cakes, right at the start we want to display every single cake. So when we set this state, I'm going to set cakes displayed to the full list of cake data that we receive from the API. So what we have now is two instances of the same list, but this one, this first one, we're going to leave alone. We're not going to want to change it whenever we're searching, whereas this list, cakes displayed, we're going to want to change it depending on what the search input is. So when we come down here, we can leave all this code the same, except instead of changing the cakes, which we said we don't want to change, we're just going to change the cakes displayed. And now, since the cakes component is the one that decides or that renders out all of our cakes, instead of passing the full list, we only want to pass the list of cakes that are displayed. So let's give it a try again. I'm going to search for sponge, and then I'm going to delete, and I can see it's coming back, and now I'm going to search for cheesecake. So I can see every time I change, if I remove a search phrase, it automatically loads up the whole list again. So if I come in here and I type carrot, it's going to load just the carrot cakes. That way we've always got our original database of carrots, or of cakes, that we can go back to for searching. Now, there's one other thing I'm going to show you in this video. Right now, if we search for a title, it works. So I can say Victoria, and it'll pull that up. But maybe I want to search for the description as well. If I put in jam, will it find it? It won't. And that's because we're only searching the cake title. So if you think back to when we were filtering out these cakes, we've got the whole list of cakes, we filter down, and we match the title to the search string. But if I wanted to match the description as well, I can use this OR operator. So I can say match the title or the description. I can say cake description includes value. And now we've just made our search a little bit friendlier. So if I come in here and search for jam, I'm going to find it. And if I come in here and search for, let's try Donkey Kong. Ooh, gotta type it right. Donkey Kong, there we go. So that's how you can search across multiple properties of an argument. Hope this was helpful. As always, if you have any questions, ask in Slack.